On this edition of the program, where do the Democrats go from here? We take a look at Kamala Harris's billion-dollar campaign spending and Donald Trump's new appointments. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for November 13th, 2024. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you. And did you guys smell that? Breathe it in, breathe it in. It's that new campaign cycle smell. Oh, you know, it smells like morning dew and donors' wallets that have yet to be creased. And with the beginning of a new cycle means that we have the beginning and the dawning of a new presidency. We will get to the latest appointments made by Donald Trump as we gear up for the beginning of his second term. We will also later be joined by Dave Levinthal, the money man, so he can break down what is fact and fiction of one of my favorite stories so far in the post-election cycle, and that is, where's the money, Lebowski? How did Kamala Harris spend $1 billion, billion dollars that she raised since she got the nomination, or was the presumptive nominee for the Democrats? But before we do that, we want to bring back some of the voices over the next few weeks that you heard before the election. We're going to get their thoughts after the election. And one of those is our pal, Kirk Bado of Hotline for National Journal. Now, you might remember, Kirk Bado has been on this show a few times. He was on with us right after the Kamala Harris-Donald Trump debate. And here he is right now. The one and only Kirk Bado of Hotline. So how are you feeling? How are you recovering? Are you taking time off from this election season?
We're still going strong here at Hotline, but I've been stricken with like a little head cold today. And this is the first time I think I've let my body like kind of process the last few weeks or so, and it all decided to just come on at once. So I'm feeling a little hazy right now. I got some nice cough medicine in me. You know, maybe been celebrating the Steeler game a little bit too much, but I'm feeling. If I have to read one more post-mortem though about Democratic finger blaming, I really do think it's gonna put me over the edge. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I don't know. I feel like I think I might actually do a really, really annoying I got the election totally right post. I feel like I might do a greatest hits on because now that it's at the end, I feel like I had a real beat on it. I feel like I never bought the idea that Kamala had Obama level enthusiasm. I bought that Donald Trump was going to be more popular. I've had multiple people in my life come to me and say, hey, I was going to email you because I thought you were being too heavy-handed on the Kamala campaign, and I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't because I would have looked like an idiot, and everything that you said was going to happen wound up happening. I don't know. But then again, I'm a very venal, self-celebratory person. I am now fully a part of the political media class, so I only really care about whether or not I was humiliated or I get to lord my victories in other people's faces. That's where I'm at.
Well, look, I think that you are allowed to spike the football a little bit here because, you know, every time I've been on this podcast and ever since we first started talking at the conventions over the summer, you have been the steady drumbeat of, are we sure this is happening right now? Like you didn't drink the Democratic Kool-Aid, I think, like a lot of folks did. And that, you know, for as much as Trump and Harris, for her part, kind of thumb their noses at the fundamentals and at the norms of
Yeah.
campaigning. This is a norm-breaking campaign cycle. It was the fundamentals that ultimately put Trump back in the White House here.
Yeah.
Dissatisfaction with the direction of the country, the economy. We can get into specifics here in a second. Incumbent president that had a 38, 39% approval rating. Folks just don't win with those type of numbers here, and you saw it play out across every demographic group in almost every part of the country.
Well, and that's, ultimately that was the biggest thing that always made me tilt toward Trump is just like, hey, 60-30 right track, wrong track. Like, who survives that? Who survives that? And if you're going to survive that as Kamala Harris, you need to run away from your boss. You got to torch your boss, and this is another thing I got right was in the summer when it was becoming clear that Joe Biden was a liability, when it was becoming clear that you were doing more talking about cheap fakes than you were about how good of a job the president was doing, then I said, eventually the Democratic Party will have to torch Biden. And you can either do it now before the election, or you can do it later after the election. And like in that column, I kind of laid out like, I'm like, my prescription then was, hey, make Jamie Comer famous. Highlight everything that's happened with the Biden self-dealing. Say, you want to know what? Now we actually do think that this is a problem. Joe Biden does need to address this. Maybe we should think about some kind of action from within the House. Turn on him there. Burn him based on the things that are already legitimized on some level, because at the end of the day, you are all going to want to run away from him. And guess what? They did want to run away from him, but nobody wanted to push him all that much. And now we're at where we're making poor Kirk Bado sick because everybody wants to point fingers at each other and say, well, you should have done this and you should have done that. And here's another thing. For everybody's like, oh, it's too woke. It's too woke. The party's too woke. Look, everybody who's here, I said this on the Patreon episode, or sorry, Substack episode, Freudian slip, the Substack episode. The left might have brought the booze to the party, but nobody was asking the establishment to take shots until they puked. Like, this was not Bernie Sanders didn't push Kyrsten Sinema out of the party. Bernie Sanders didn't push Joe Manchin out of the party. Like, you had activists that were upset with those people because they wouldn't capitulate, but it was the establishment that let it happen. Chuck Schumer didn't stand up and say, hey, everybody, knock it off. We don't want to lose a reliably blue seat in West Virginia. No, right. They let it happen. Every step of the way, they let it happen because they were afraid that they would be next. And so they capitulated to it, and now they are where they are. And so I find it a little rich that you see these establishment cases that are saying, well, I don't know, Latinx, who thought about that? You did. You did. Nobody asked you to kneel for 9 minutes and yeah, nobody asked you to kneel for 9 minutes in a kente cloth with a mask on your face, okay? Like, this was your thing. You wanted to do it. You didn't want to be the adult in the room. So don't act like you want to be it now. This was everything that the establishment wanted.
Well, so if we're taking it from that stretch, which I think is a great point, that they allowed this to happen. They allowed the party, they allowed the narrative to be hijacked by the activist class, by the small minority of their most active voters, at the expense of, like what you're saying, the adults in the room. And if you look at some of the exit data that we've seen right now, almost every demographic group of voters nearly across the entire country have rejected the Democrats because of what we are seeing here right now. Do you think that if they had a stronger central leader like the Republican Party, like if, again, don't clip this and take this out of context, but if the Democrats had their version of a strong-arm leader like a Donald Trump, could they have not been hijacked like this? Or because it's just the nature of the Democratic Party that they are a party led by their most activist forces, at least in this current iteration, that there was nothing that could be done to avoid it?
So here's how I see it, specifically with the Democratic Party. All of their ideas, good and bad, come from the left. every idea that has eventually made its way to the center, that has been broadly popular, has started in their activist class, has started in their more far left side. The role of the establishment is supposed to say, well, that's ridiculous. That's actually good. We can do something with single payer healthcare. We can do something with healthcare reform. What do you say we polish it up and we take some of these things out of it so it's going to pass, and then we push it and we say it's Obamacare. Boom. Now Obamacare is very, very hard to repeal. The establishment did their job in that particular case. That's a good example of it. The problem where the Democrats are compared to the Republicans is this. The Republicans had a violent change of leadership that ended with a win. The Democrats violently resisted a change in leadership, and now it has led to a loss. And so now you have, from the ashes, all these people that are going to point fingers, and we have called this a Democratic Civil War. Another thing we were right about. That it's going to be this 5 points gangs of New York thing, and you're already seeing the battle lines being drawn. Andy Bashir has already gone to Iowa. You're already seeing these pieces that are being put together.
Gavin Newsom's going to be the leader of Resistance 2.0. He's already convened the legislature in California to try and Trump-proof their policies. That's the lane he's attacking right now. What are the other points that you're looking at here?
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess the only thing that's different between the two is that when Trump won, everybody in the Republican infrastructure could say, well, MAGA can't win because it's only 45% and it's poison to everybody else. And that's true in some cases. And by the way, Republicans, especially those that bitched about Donald Trump forever, you're going to miss him when he's gone. He can turn out people in a way that is rare in these off-year elections. But we'll get to that in a second.
Ron DeSantis ain't putting up these numbers.
I mean, they're going to have to do a lot of work. They're going to have to figure out a different way to put together the coalition because they're not getting those first-time voters in the same way. The Democrats don't know where the winning coalition is, and they're going to have to figure it out on the fly, which is why you're going to see the primaries in the midterms get weird. There's going to be a lot of people that are run because right now what we don't know is where the donors are going to go. What does Reid Hoffman think about this election? Who does Reid Hoffman think would have won if he could build his perfect candidate in the lab? Who does Alex Soros believe if he could build his perfect candidate in a lab would win? Because that's really where this is going to come in. Right now, we got a lot of different interesting ideas of where the future of the Democratic Party is going to go. And we're going to see each of these donors pick a Pokemon, and they're all going to fight each other over the next 4 years.
So who would your Blastoids be in this right now if you're looking ahead to 2026, or who would your starter be? Because if you look at what the midterms are going to offer us, look, Republicans have won the Senate. They've got about a 53 seat majority there right now. It looks like they're going to take the House by similar margins as they did 2 years ago. And if you look at the map of the Senate,
overperformance.
Yes, it is. Absolutely an overperformance. And if you look at the Senate map for 2 years from now, we're still picking through 2024, but if you're looking ahead to 26, the best Democratic pickup opportunities are probably going to be in Maine and North Carolina. Would you look to there to see where the prototypical, maybe not the absolute, maybe not that figure, but the prototypical figure that could lead the Democratic Party in 2028? Or if you're still thinking about Senate races, would you see about what happens in Kansas or Iowa? Because I think one of the most interesting races was Dan Osborne in Nebraska this time, running as an independent, but he was able to talk to working class voters, talk about the frustrations with folks in power in a way that if you would have, I think, done a blind test of his ads and just listened to them, you might have thought it was a Democrat running in the 1990s in Tennessee or something like that. So where would you look for that next spiritual leader, I guess, of the Democratic Party?
Well, I think it's going to be really interesting. I would say I would look at outsider people. I would look at people that would be able to run in especially those states, in Maine and in North Carolina. Look, North Carolina is a hard state. I just fundamentally always believe that it closes late. It closes red. It's hard for people on these federal levels to get elected in North Carolina. I would also say Democrats need to add to seats. I'm not a John Ossoff guy. I don't think John Ossoff is an amazing candidate in Georgia. I'll be very curious to see who gets the Republican primary there, because I think depending on what happens between now and 2 years from now, you have an opportunity to run as an outsider, quote unquote, for the Senate, a Trump outsider in that race. And then, of course, we have the question of, where's the Kemp of it all? Where does Brian Kemp want to be? If Brian Kemp wants to be in the Senate, then John Ossoff, I would say materially, would be a underdog in that race. But
hell of a lot easier than knocking off Warnock, that's for sure.
Yes. My goal would be, if I were to build him in a lab, I would run a John Fetterman without the stroke. That's what I would run. I would now. It's hard to be as authentic as John Fetterman. They don't really make politicians all that much. If John Fetterman is somebody that no matter what, you believe what he says. He is, the more he has been on a national level, the more you have said, okay, that's that guy. I think he has the ability to tilt left. If he had a big program that he wanted to pitch, that would be something that would be interesting on a presidential level. But I would look for that. I would look for somebody that feels at home going to rural areas and talking to Trump people and saying, I get it. I understand. Let me pitch to you why not only I am somebody that you can trust, but why the Democratic Party isn't poison. Because that's the other problem, is that right now, are you going to turn out Asheville? Are you going to turn out Charlotte? You're going to turn out some of these areas in North Carolina to a point where you can totally blow out the rural vote? I don't know. I think that the Democratic Party's brand has a problem. It's got a real problem. But with bankruptcy comes the ability for you to rebuild it. It comes the ability for you to say, this is the Democratic Party that I'm going to build. Come with me and do it. That's a very capable message for candidates. You just got to find the right person. And that's where these primaries are going to be ugly, because you're going to get a lot of people that are going to say it's because we didn't go too far left. And you're going to have a lot of people that are going to say it's because we didn't play it safe enough and we didn't shun every leftist idea ever. And the history of the Democratic Party says you need a restrictor plate that's charismatic, that has one or two good ideas from the left flank of the party.
Well, it's like what you were saying earlier about how that's what was the traditional role of the establishment, was to be that type of moderating force, to sift through the ideas of their activist classmates. Yeah, you know what? Maybe single payer, maybe not, but maybe universal basic wage, maybe here and there. You have an opportunity there. What I'm thinking here is, as well, is that this, decisive win for Trump and Republicans at all levels might be a real blessing in disguise for Republicans, for that very point, is that if this was a closer election, I think you would see even more hand wringing and more what if game than we already do right now, which is pretty sizable. Yeah. But this allows them to have a cleaner slate, to have a burn it all down scenario where I don't think Harris has much of a future as a standard bearer for the party. No. Joe Biden's going to go up to Wilmington and live out the rest of his days up in Rehoboth Beach. He's not going to be a thought leader of the party. I'm thinking back, there was a Jonathan Martin column about a month or two before the election in Politico that talked a lot about how the best thing for Republicans is if Trump loses big and loses decisively. Well, right church, different pew here. It's the Democrats who had a pretty decisive loss here. And now they have to excise a lot of demons here and come out and have a lot of time to really soul search in the wilderness these next 4 years.
Well, and part of it's also going to be the Democrats need a coherent strategy on abortion that isn't just we're going to restore Roe. Roe isn't on the ballot. Anybody who says the phrase Roe is on the ballot again, stop listening to them. immediately. It's too big of an issue. It speaks to too core of a demographic for the Democratic coalition for you to not take it more seriously than trust us. Eventually, maybe we'll get 60 votes, except for that one time we got 60 votes and didn't do anything about it. Like, that's, and especially now, I mean, Chris Murphy came out and was, spitting hot fire on Twitter saying like, hey, look at our map right now. The hard cap we have in terms of the current coalition is 52 seats in the Senate. We can't get 60. And look, they came within like 30,000 votes of being locked out of the Senate majority for like 2 cycles, even if they did the best job they possibly can. In this, maybe they pick up 2. They still have no guarantees that they're going to take the majority, but it would have been worse than that if the blue wall had totally collapsed in the Senate. We were perilously close to a Senator Kerry Lake.
We're still waiting for the AP call on that. But like, you're right.
But yeah, it goes back to this, and this is something that I might do something more about, but like Kyrsten Sinema negotiated the bill that Kamala Harris ran as almost entirely her flank as the border answer. Who negotiated that? Kyrsten Sinema. How'd they treat Kyrsten Sinema? They ran her out with pitchforks. They ran her out of the party with pitchforks. Are you telling me, Chuck Schumer, that you would have spent as much money in an electorate that wound up tilting right in Arizona, that you would have spent as much money? You had to turn a progressive Gallego into a country cowboy border hawk overnight, and you had to spend the money to do it, where Kyrsten Sinema could have looked Arizona voters in the eyes and said, I negotiated a bill. I take this seriously. I don't agree with the president. Credibly, everything that they made Gallego do fake, they could have done with Kyrsten Sinema. That, to me, is the larger problem. The larger problem is like, why did they run her out? Why did you not say, instead of, they wound up spending money with Angela also Brooks in Maryland. You tell me that wouldn't have been money that you could have spent to say, hey, Joe Manchin, look, you were right to stand up for the filibuster. You were right to do this. Let's give it one more try. We're going to put money behind you. You're the only Democrat that can win. You might talk Jim Justice out of not running. Like there's a whole world that was there. And instead they made those two a pariah. And I think, when you look at how close that is, again, we're damn near, I mean, by the time people hear this, it's going to be past a week. It's Monday when we record it. It's taken a week, and Kerry Lake still has a mathematical shot at being a senator. She's not going to get there. But by the AP's estimation, that's not the case. You screwed up. You screwed up. You had a safe seat there.
Oh, exactly. And it's not just that they drove out the Manchins and Cinemas of the party. It's also, at least in the Senate map, they didn't give themselves a realistic path back. They were banking on people like John Tester to pull off an historic run at the top of the ticket. They waited so long to get involved in any of the offensive targets. Now, you and I both know that Texas and Florida were long shots, but they might not have been as long if Schumer and if the super PACs had gotten involved a little bit earlier. But I want to go back to the point you made about Roe being on the ballot and abortion not saving Democrats here. I think one of the most fascinating parts of this right now is that there were a lot of smart Democratic strategists who said that the divide on abortion would be enough to carry the day. And it was enough if you look at the midterms, if you look at the special elections in the past 2 years since Dobbs fell, on those more lower turnout elections. And ever since Trump got on the scene, Democrats have come out to vote in midterms more than Republicans, mostly because Trump at the top of the ticket turns out those low propensity voters that you're talking about right now. So one of the things that I'm watching very closely in the coming weeks, and as we gear up for these off-year elections in New Jersey, Virginia, look ahead to the midterms, is how Democrats reevaluate their messaging and position on abortion access, especially.
Yeah.
That is not the silver bullet that they wanted to at a presidential level. It might be in these lower turnout elections, but I mean, look at some of the math here. I mean, what did it end up in Florida? About 57% of voters there voted to repeal.
Didn't clear 60. Yeah,
it didn't clear 60, but 58% of Florida voters voted to repeal the 6-week abortion ban that they have there. Yet they overwhelmingly went for Trump and returned Rick Scott to the Senate there. Look at the same thing in Arizona right now, where they also had abortion on the ballot. Kerry Lake is within a hair's breadth of being a senator. Nevada, like all these states, all these battleground states where abortion was on the ticket. Democrats were really hoping it would juice their turnout, but it's just nothing. It's always second in the face of Trump here. So I think there's going to be a lot of soul searching about that for sure.
Well, and also this gets to kind of the strategy element of it, and this is why I hated Project 2025. I thought it was a dog from the jump, and I didn't like the strategy from Democrats to just paint a totally parallel world away from Trump. Trump had said, "I'm for the states, I'm for exceptions," and the Democratic messaging was, he is a Mike Pence wet dream of the Handmaid's Tale world, right, that they're going to track your periods and this is going to be you had the Gavin Newsom super PAC ads where women were being arrested trying to cross state lines for an abortion and stuff like that.
Right.
It really, really, really gets the base riled up. You don't need their vote. They're fine. If they know enough about that, they're coming out. You have to meet the argument where it is. And there's plenty to do. You can say, hey, if Donald Trump is that moderate, why hasn't he criticized any of these trigger laws? If he apparently has the control over these state legislatures, like he did with IVF in Alabama, he can pull their leash at any moment and he can make them do whatever. Then why hasn't he done anything about these trigger laws? These trigger laws were barbaric. They've been on the books, some of them for decades. Right. They have no compunction with the way things are going. And if you look at some of these horror cases of doctors not knowing the legal liability, why hasn't Donald Trump done that? Make him own it. There's plenty for you to make him own without making it something that you were essentially saying, if you don't believe us, you believe Trump. And plenty of people on the issue of abortion said, oh, all right, well, I want eggs to be cheaper.
Well, you didn't need to make it the whole thing like that, like you said, the Handmaid's Tale. You could look at the real world examples, especially from some of the good reporting from ProPublica and these other organizations that are documenting those cases of these women who are at these clinics who don't know the legal standing, but instead they tried to make this into this hyper dystopian world here that just wasn't as tangible or as real to voters as, to your point, the price of eggs. That's what they feel every day. They don't feel like the V for Vendetta dystopian London. They don't feel that it's, their life is a Handmaid's Tale here right now. And if you do, you're already coming to the polls here right now. And I think it's remarkable that the Democratic coalition is becoming, or at least the coalition coming out of this election, is less demographically diverse, is more white, more college educated. And if you would have, what if I would have told you that 7-8 years ago that was going to be the Democratic Party's base? You would have thought I was crazy.
They essentially have George W. Bush's coalition without the rurals, and also they're pushing higher taxes. It's like, right. So you're not even selling them the stuff that they want. Right? Like that's...
and unlike George W. Bush, they're also like losing support amongst Hispanic voters, because remember, he had a huge push with the evangelical community in there.
Yeah, it's they have the suburbs. Unfortunately, they found out exactly what the ceiling was on those, and the attrition of the coalition is real. It's a real problem, and it was something that we saw at the conventions where, the Republican convention was like a family reunion where grandpa just survived a heart attack and the two people that had been fighting just didn't show up. It's like, so the Never Trumpers weren't there. You didn't see any of the doom and gloom, spit on the ground when Donald Trump name gets mentioned kind of stuff. But everybody that was there, great time, having a good time, high-fiving. They loved it, right?
Right.
The Democratic one was a more fragile coalition, and you had people that were mad. You had a lot of adrenaline because of the Kamala stuff, but it was
a lot of people on edge there because of the divisions within the party, and
that's a problem. And this is like 2 cycles ago issue, but it's like, hey, did the Democrats have a message to the rurals? No. Wasn't true 4 years ago. Isn't true now. What do you say? What do you say to somebody who lives outside city limits? What do you say to somebody who lives in the exurbs? Nothing. They have nothing to give to them. And when you look at the way that Kamala Harris was trying to appeal at the 11th hour, where it's like, oh, black men, we're going to legalize drugs and make you legal drug dealers. Right. We're going to give you race-based money for small businesses, which is like way federally illegal for very good reasons. It has been outlawed that you can give people money based on, or programs can be ordered based on race. Even who was I talking to last night? Somebody about the young men thing that Tim Walz, and I don't want to make this like a Tim Walz versus Josh Shapiro thing, but just Tim Walz in general. Tim Walz to me is, and I think he's most comfortable as, a lefty that can explain leftist policies to normies. He is not the super manly football coach that we want to put out there to hunt. He knows he can hunt, but he's the Frasier of the group. He's the empathetic high school teacher.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Like he's the empathetic high school teacher that can help with the football team. He knows enough. He's not going to embarrass himself when he goes and does it, but he's not the football coach. And it's like, use him like that.
He's the assistant coach you go to when you have a problem. He's the assistant coach who you go to when you have a problem in class, and you have a problem with your friends, and he's an ear that can like give you the folksy advice and help you out.
But mostly he's the guy that starts the gay straight alliance, right? It's like that's who he is, and that's great. That's fine. You can succeed with that. But when you put him up on stage with his old football team and they're all wearing the jerseys, and it's like, that doesn't happen. That's not a real thing. You're doing a fake manly thing to act like you get. He's not Coach from Friday Night Lights, No. And that's the problem is if you don't even know where you're going, then you have larger problems. You do have systemic problems with some of these groups because you've just not focused on them for so long and then tried to, 11th hour message to them, and it comes off as fake and stupid.
Well, I think it goes to show that the Democratic Party has built their coalition over the last 8 years. As we criticize the Republican Party a lot for being the party of Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. What are the Democrats been but the party of anti-Donald Trump for the last 8 years?
Yes.
And when that message isn't enough, when people look at Trump and say, look, hey, again, I don't like the tweets. I think he's kind of funny. But you know what? At least under him, I had money in my pocket. Groceries were cheaper and everything. And the pandemic might have screwed with him a lot, but let's give him another chance here. When you put all your eggs in the anti-Trump basket, which she doubled down on by, going out and campaigning in the swing states with Liz Cheney and everything. That's not enough. And I think the Democratic Party here really has to decide what they're for, because they're not going to have the ability to run against Trump in 2028. They can do it in 26. You can punt this conversation for after the midterms here. But if you want to build that winning coalition, if you want to start peeling off some of those rental voters that it looks like Trump had for this election, you need to start learning how to speak to those people, being authentic to your point about, the Tim Walz football coach thing. And you need to nominate someone who is not burdened by this previous administration.
If they run against Trump in the midterms, they're going to lose. They're going to underperform. Like, you need to stand for something. You need to be the new Democratic Party. And who knows what happens between now and then? Who knows how much Trump wants to campaign? That's the other thing is we're going to find out real quick. Donald Trump has always kind of campaigned as a means to an end for his own presidentials. Right. Does he just not campaign at all? Maybe he just doesn't do anything. Maybe he wants to do it. Maybe he's like, hey, look, these are going to be my last big rallies. My last big campaign season is going to be this midterm. Maybe he really wants to push it. Maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to run for Senate in Georgia and he just lives in, Dalton for 2 months. Who knows?
Right. He has an extended Kobe Bryant farewell tour, just doing stadium
Maybe.
shows all the time.
I mean, look, he's our generation's Reagan. And there's and you can't really argue that anymore. He defined, like Reagan did, he defined a decade of conservatism. There are going to be people in the same way that it was long in the tooth by the time that like the 2000s hit, that there were still candidates up there weeping about how amazing Reagan was. They're going to be doing that about Trump for the next 20 years. It's going to be the same thing. It's going to be like, well, I remember the first time that Trump, Reagan also ran out a whole generation of conservatives. There's a reason why Barry Goldwater isn't talked about in the same way that he would have been otherwise, because he went against Reagan. Like, that's why he got run over. And you're going to see a lot of these legacies kind of have that happen. But the Democrats need to be Clinton. Don't fight the old war. Say Clinton
don't
came
fight
in.
the last war. Don't fight the last war here.
Clinton came in and said, "Don't stop thinking about tomorrow." He said, "Look, I'm imperfect, but I'm likable, and I'm going to explain leftist policies to people in a way that makes sense, but he's not going to stray too far away. He's going to, I don't know. I wonder, and there's going to be a lot of time between now and then, but if every moment of the Democratic establishment and the media is focused on, ooh, what did Donald Trump do? Oh, do you know that, Miller's going to be the deputy chief of staff. Let's spend, 2 months talking about how evil Miller is. And let's look up every time that Susie Wiles might have farted in public. Let's make this really, really bad. It's like, you're spinning your wheels. They liked him. They voted for him. Focus on your own stuff. Where are your priorities? How are you going to, because that's the good thing for them is they got a lot of useless time in Congress that they can focus on whatever they want. They're going to be obstructionist to the level they can, and then say, well, what we should be talking about is whatever that is going to define their fate over the next 8 years. All right.
And I think, look, that they're going to have a great platform to do that in
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say they're going to have a great platform to do that in Congress, but with the attitude towards Democrats in Washington right now, my 2 cents is that if we're looking for a new emerging leader for the Democratic Party, someone who can talk about these leftist liberal policies in a way that regular folks can understand, I want to look toward Washington. I would look toward the states, and there's a glut of talented governors, not just in California or Michigan, who I think the Democrats are going to start really looking towards as those leaders and those folks as chief explainers in chief.
Who would you put on that list? Where's the Kirk Bado power poll? Top 5 govs. Dem govs.
Are way too early. This is the Joe Lombardo way too early power rankings here. I would look to someone like Shapiro. I would look to someone like Wes Moore. I would look to Andy Beshear as well. I mean, Andy Beshear, he might have gotten shortchanged in the VP race, but he's won 2 tough elections in a red state. Again, his dad's name helps a lot there, but I think he does a good job of explaining the priorities of the Democratic Party and what it means for a class of folks who might not have a college degree. So Shapiro, Wes Moore, I think Roy Cooper as well has some role to play, but that's my North Carolina bias coming out here. I think there's a glut of talent. It's just how they leverage that going forward.
Yeah. Obviously, Gretchen Whitmer is going to be a big one there, and then Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom's a dog though, and I'm just gonna if I can short Gavin Newsom stock right now, I would do it. I don't know. I don't know if there's a crypto betting market that I can just bet on Gavin Newsom having zero traction, but that dude has zero traction. And it's like, if you look, he's like, oh, we're going to safeguard California policies. Take a look at your own electoral environment, dog. Like, you just got a proposition passed to tighten up crime laws that you were in favor of loosening. You've just had the Bay Area turn over leadership. Like, this ain't 2016 anymore, where California is like, oh, we need to stick up. No, it's a long time going, and I think that he's going to be gone as well. All right.
So I think any path of resistance 2.0 is a very narrow one and a treacherous one, and he should not be walking that.
No, neither do I. Kirk Bado, Hotline. Thank you very much, man. Where can people find you?
Sir, thank you for having me on here. It's always good to sort through my feelings and thoughts with one of the smartest guys I know. You can find me on Twitter still, for now, at Kirk_Bado. You can find all our work at nationaljournal.com. We're still analyzing results from House races that haven't been called yet, looking at covering the Senate leadership battles and covering the transition as well on there. That's nationaljournal.com.
There we go. Everybody head on over there. Thank you very much, buddy.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you go to support our program. That is where you get all of our bonus content for only $3 a week. If you buy me a cup of coffee on your commute, I will give you 2 bonus episodes each and every week. And folks, when I tell you that these bonus episodes happen all year round, I mean it. We work on holidays. We work when we are tired. We work when we are happy. We work when we are joyful, because at the end of the day, we work for you. And in case you have not heard the good news, along with the incoming administration, we have made the $99 annual deal permanent. Yeah, that means 150 episodes of this show for under $100. It is available now. It will be available tomorrow. It is available as a gift if you would like to give it to somebody. Substack makes that very easy for you to do. It's all available to you. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Let's get to some of the news that we didn't have a chance to cover. First, here is the latest on Trump appointments. Treasury Secretary is Scott Bessent. National Security Advisor is Mike Waltz. We're going to get to him in a second. Secretary of State is Marco Rubio, along with Waltz from Florida. Again, we're going to get to that in a second. Homeland Security is Kirsty Noem. Hold on to your dogs. EPA's Lee Zeldin. You might know that name because he ran better than you might expect against Kathy Hochul for governor of New York in the midterms. New York, of course, a bright spot in an election that otherwise did not have a red wave. Speaking of New York State, Elise Stefanik will be the UN ambassador. The border czar, which is really funny. I mean, you know that Donald Trump is a branding guy because the border czar was talked about a lot as Kamala Harris's title, and so he officially named a border czar in Tom Homan. The chief of staff is Susie Wiles, and the deputy chief of staff is Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is somebody that is extraordinarily controversial amongst the opponents of the Trump administration. He is a border hawk, and he is not afraid to say it. Stephen Miller is the man for whom has said that they might set up deportation camps so as to process people out of the country. There is seemingly no doubt that Donald Trump will follow through on his first promise to begin deporting people that have either already overstayed their welcome or been denied asylum. We'll see at exactly what scale that's going to happen. You never really know at what scale it's going to happen, but he is putting in people that have talked tough about it. And Tom Homan has been involved in the border as well. He has experience when it comes to that, and is going to be a quote. Friends, he is going to be a quote. One last one that is coming in here at the 11th hour is Mike Huckabee to be the ambassador to Israel. That is an evangelical pick. The Huckabees have been friends to the Trumps for a little bit now, certainly since the 2016 primary when they ran against each other and Mike Huckabee endorsed Donald Trump. You're hearing rumors that Linda McMahon will be named Secretary of Commerce. She is helping to lead the transition team. So you imagine that as she is looking for people for these jobs, she found one of them in the mirror, of course. That is Linda McMahon, as in still the wife of Vince McMahon, the founder and now ousted creative force and CEO of the World Wrestling Entertainment Company, which last year sold to TKO, a combined company between WWE and UFC for Endeavor. Oh boy. Now that I have an opportunity, when she gets named, when I have an opportunity to go through the wrestling history of Linda McMahon, she might be her own episode. Now that I have a chance to fully combine Linda McMahon's political history and her wrestling history. There's a great Werner Herzog clip to be played with that. Marco Rubio is the big pick at Secretary of State. This is more of a capitulation to the establishment wing of the party. Susie Wiles is close to Marco Rubio. Rick Grinnell was somebody that was named and mentioned as possibly being a part of that. We will see where Grinnell goes. One more domino that has yet to fall is that a promise that was made from Donald Trump to the Libertarian Party was a libertarian in the cabinet. I don't believe that anybody that has been named so far would be considered a libertarian, at least by Libertarian Party standards. So we will keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, President Trump's plans to stock his administration with Floridians are beginning to create a very interesting landscape for the 2026 midterms. As we mentioned, Trump is nominating Senator Marco Rubio for Secretary of State and Representative Michael Waltz as National Security Advisor. Also, I have heard rumors that there might be another federally elected Floridian that is named to the cabinet. That means Governor Ron DeSantis is now positioned to fill those seats. Not only Rubio's Senate seat, but also Waltz's House seat. The idea would be that he would appoint a successor to serve until a 2026 special election. That would then lead to a full election in 2028. This would create the possibility that Ron DeSantis could appoint somebody only for him to run in the midterms, with DeSantis' gubernatorial career capped at 2027. Republican strategist Anthony Padici has noted that DeSantis' political strength has surged despite recent setbacks, and we would agree. That quote was in Politico by an article from our friend Kimberly Leonard, who will join the show next week to get into a little bit more Florida gossip. Psst, 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 psst. A reminder that a lot of these musical chairs are also revolving around who's going to run for Florida governor. Because again, DeSantis is capped in 2027. That's when he's going to, so effectively it's 2026 because it would be the inauguration in 27. So if he is running for Senate, and this is what's going to happen. I mean, this is all the rumors. Mark Caputo of the Bulwark reports that it's probably going to be Ron DeSantis. One of his big fundraisers is going to be named the senator immediately. Ron DeSantis would not name himself or Casey DeSantis to the seat immediately. And then, after all that, he runs in 2026. He would absolutely slaughter anybody. Ron DeSantis, if he gets named to the Senate, would be in the Senate for as long as he wants in Florida. It would take a tremendous change for him to lose a senatorial election that happens once every 6 years. And since he is almost assuredly not going to get named to the administration because Susie Wiles is the chief of staff, and Susie Wiles hates Ron DeSantis because, according to reports, DeSantis tried to ruin her political career. Ho, 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 I have a machine gun now. Enjoy the Senate. But the question of who else is going to join the administration is one that we should pay attention to, especially when they are elected to the House. And that's because right now, as I speak to you, the New York Times has called 214 seats for the Republicans in the House. That means that there are 16 undecided, and of those, there are fairly comfortable leads of at least a point in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. It means the Republicans are likely to take those seats. That means that they will have a majority of some variety. 218 gets you control of the House. But if Elise Stefanik is gone, if Waltz is gone, that means that you are starting to get a little queasy on exactly how big that majority is going to be, which is why House Republican leaders who are managing this slim majority are hoping President Trump will stop appointing House members to his administration. Of course, you have Stefanik gone, you have Waltz gone, and Speaker Mike Johnson, who may or may not be facing another challenge to his leadership, is in contact with the Trump team to say that the narrow majority sensitivity is going to be affected by more vacancies. GOP members Mike Rogers, Sam Graves, and Glenn Thompson remain on Trump's short list for cabinet roles, and special elections to replace Stefanik and Waltz could take months, with state governors setting the election's timeline. Of course, the question would be when they resign and when they join the administration, which would, they'd have a little bit of a dance. But I've heard that there have been offers extended to other people in the House. I've just heard it. I've heard it. Now, will it be true? Will they take it? Who knows? Who knows? This is how you know I'm not really a reporter anymore. I'm just a guy who hears things. What a delectable place to be. You can help support this kind of nonsense if you head on over to takepoliticsseriously.com. Again, $3 per week gets you 2 bonus episodes each and every week. If you buy me a cup of coffee, then you get that. That's monthly. And it's, just about that time. If you know somebody who was really rocked by this election, had no idea what was going to happen, well, you can give them a gift of this program. Substack makes it very easy to give gifts. And 1 year of the show is a great gift. If you love somebody, then give them that. In fact, I'm going to read you guys something. I was going through my email over the weekend. Now that I had a time to breathe, I tried to not do a lot of work this weekend, but I still wound up doing just a little bit of, email hygiene. And I found an email from right before the election, after I had made my prediction. And it was a bit of a nasty gram. It was, saying that I'm obviously a Trump supporter and blah, 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 right? Heat of the moment. No offense taken. I was nice. I responded back, just getting back to this email. And then I was conciliatory, because anybody who listens that much to the show, it doesn't matter where your passion's at. All I try to do is call balls and strikes for you guys. And I know that sometimes passionately things get boiled over. But this very, very conciliatory person wrote back and said the following. I'm going to read this. I listened to your show, Pod Save America, Fast Politics, James Carville, Left, Right, and Center. Somebody's got to win. The rest is politics. And of those, you had the most accurate analysis, and I kept getting mad at you because it wasn't what I wanted to believe. Friends, come on. What else you got to know? I believe I got this election pretty well right. And if you want to share that with somebody, if you want to give the gift of PX3, there's now a very easy way to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com, and you can hook them up for a whole year at that $99 price point. And now, back to the show. It's the most money raised and spent for a political campaign in American history. But where did the $1 billion pledged to elect Kamala Harris go? It's a story we're going to follow over the next few weeks because the details so far, at least to me, have been pretty stunning. We're going to quote here from Gabe Kaminsky of the Washington Examiner, who has been on top of this story and we hope to have on the show in the next few weeks. He cited FEC records to find the following. Event production was a staple of spending in the Harris campaign, which notably hosted star-studded lineups of musicians ranging from Lady Gaga to Katy Perry for an election eve rally. The campaign paid more than $15 million, according to federal filings, to companies for such services. And you might have heard this next one. There was $1 million paid to Oprah Winfrey's Harpo Productions on October 15th in West Hollywood, California. Now, I will add editorially that Oprah has said that that was not a personal fee to her, but nobody has ever made that allegation. Viva Creative, a marketing agency that has touted work with Oprah and comedian Trevor Noah, the Washington Nationals baseball team, and American Express, they got $1.8 million from the Harris campaign for event production from September to October. There was also another company called Production Management One in Maryland that also received a healthy sum, $1.7 million, with large payments also going to Fox Productions, Temple University, Wizard Studios North, the Park Hyatt Chicago, and other entities for events. Now, this is not something that is necessarily crazy, but the eye-popping numbers here are. And there's something that you're going to want to keep an eye on because I think that this campaign might be used as an example for campaigns going forward. We continue. There was Magic Productions, a Wisconsin-based company which has worked for the NBA playoffs, the Super Bowl. There was also the Bellagio Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. The Harris campaign paid that company $2.3 million. And this was something that was reported. A source familiar with the matter told the Examiner that the Harris campaign spent 6 figures on building a set for Harris's appearance on the popular Call Her Daddy podcast with host Alex Cooper. That was because Kamala didn't want to fly to LA to do the show where Alex Cooper normally does the show. That was reportedly filmed in a hotel room in Washington, D.C. Something that I would love to hear from Joe Rogan is whether or not the Kamala Harris campaign offered to rebuild his set in doing this. Here to discuss this and so much more is our friend, the money man, Dave Levinthal. Welcome to the show, Dave.
It is great to be back, and if there's anyone on planet Earth who would more gleefully indulge your obsession, I will admit to being that person.
Now, oftentimes what happens when we have you on is we talk about the very weird, very specific world of campaign finance, which is increasingly high dollar, increasingly something where, you know, all political campaigns at the end of them kind of have this Brewster's Millions kind of feeling to them where they want to spend every penny. Because, by the way, when you donate money to a political campaign, you'll notice that among all the fine print, there's no refund section. There's no like, and by the way, if we don't spend it, we're going to send it back to you. You are giving those dollars over. And so you would expect the campaign to liquidate it. That being said, the scale of a Biden campaign that raised $700 million, a Harris campaign. So again, just after Kamala Harris became the candidate, $1 billion in. And then we find out over the weekend that the campaign itself is $20 million in debt. Even for you, somebody who's seen it all in this field, who's dug through the FEC reports of all of these campaigns, this is colossal, right?
It's colossal. And it's not surprising that it's colossal when you're talking about the amounts of money that are being raised and spent in elections today. It serves to reason that campaigns are going to go to extremes that no other campaign had gone to before. That happened in 2024. And if things truly flame out in the monumental fashion that they did for the Harris campaign, then you're going to have some reverberations from all of that are also equally monumental. So a couple of facts here. That this $20 million number that's flying around, that may or may not be real. It may be a good bit less than $20 million. It could be more than $20 million when we get final, hard, accurate, real numbers that we can sink our teeth into. Okay? We don't have that yet. And here are some dates to pay attention to. There is something at the Federal Election Commission called the Post-General Report. Well, what is that? What that is an accounting of candidates' finances, campaigns' finances, through the several weeks after the campaign actually takes place. So actually about 20 days. And that report, which will take us all the way to almost Thanksgiving, and give a full accounting of money in, money out, any debt that exists for Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, or anyone else running a federal campaign. We will know those numbers through up until almost Thanksgiving in the first week of December. Okay, so December 5th, these reports are going to drop, and we will see not only what happened in the final days of the campaign, but also to how they dealt with the fallout after the campaign. And we're also going to know a whole bunch about stuff that hasn't happened yet. So what is the Harris campaign doing now? Because the campaign still exists. Yeah. It may not be doing anything, but it exists on paper.
It is an organization. It is a legal organization.
And we're going to find out how they're dealing with what almost certainly is some pretty significant debt here. But what are they doing? Are they bringing in any money? Are these fundraising messages that continue to go out from the Harris campaign? Is money coming in not just for like other Senate campaigns that they're advertising for, but how much of that money is going right back to the Harris campaign? Because if you read the fine print of those messages, Justin, some of that money is not just going to go to the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, but could ostensibly go to the Harris campaign. So all of this is a big, gauzy, hazy mess of a question right now. And, if there's one thing that we do know at this point is that the Harris campaign, it overshot its runway in terms of landing the plane, both in an electoral sense, but also in a financial sense.
The stuff that's coming out now has largely circled around some of the payments to celebrities that were made throughout the campaign. Where is this information coming from now? I presume it is from incremental FEC reports over the last few months, but you would be the expert. How do we know this?
We know this because of reporting. Politico, their California operation, had a great article that relied on internal sources. There's a Democratic National Committee, a financial person who has gone on the record with quoting between about $18 and $20 million worth of debt. But this is already days old information, and money continues to come in to the Harris campaign. Money continues to go out of the Harris campaign. Bills that are due from vendors, from contractors,
are going to be coming in.
They may not even be sent yet. Okay, so the Harris campaign is going to have to do, under any circumstance, say she won, it doesn't matter whether she won, lost, or anything, there is financial accounting to do for weeks and likely months after the actual election day comes and goes, and you find out if you win or you lose. And we have a number of kind of historical analogs that we can point to. I think a good one and a very apt one here is Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign. Of course, that didn't go to the general election. Yeah. Barack Obama went to the general election and won. But Hillary Clinton's primary campaign spent an incredible amount of money at that period of time, at that point in time, for a primary election, and spent the better part of the next 5 years paying off what was then also to upward of $20 million worth of debt. And it wasn't until Hillary Clinton was deciding on whether to run for president again in 2016 that she actually got that debt paid off. So, sometimes this stuff takes a heck of a lot of time, and I think we can expect that the Harris campaign will be grappling with this for some time yet.
So this is all reporting. I mean, I guess this is what I need your perspective on, because I don't know where it is me, political junkie, with I've been cut off from my main feed. That is done, but I'm looking for something to make a big deal. Or if this is really something that I think could kind of unfold in a very weird and colorful way for reasons beyond necessarily the fact that, look, $1 billion campaign spent through all of its money. As you mentioned, the trend lines were all pointing here. What's different is this. No one's going to be out here trying to protect the Harris campaign. It's not, they got no friends going forward. In fact, they have nothing but a bunch of buzzards that are circling that want to pick this carcass clean. And they want to suggest to all the donors specifically, wow, that campaign really, really, really misused your money. When I run for president, boy, would I never misuse your money in any way like that. So you've got a lot of people on the Democratic side that are going to make a big deal about this. And also, I think it is going to provide an X-ray as to what a modern campaign looks like. And we're going to have a lot of value judgments on how that is. But is this a story that's going to kind of have legs, especially if it's being reported before the FEC violations and it's gotten the traction that it, or not violations, the FEC reports? I assume that it is. What's your expectation?
Look, if Kamala Harris decides that she wants to run for president again in 2028, she's going to have to deal with this. And this could be a blemish on her in a way that would not reflect well on her campaign operation and could hinder her future prospects raising money from people who gave it this time around. I mean, Kamala Harris has been at the two extremes of money problems in the past 5 years here. Let's flash back to 2019 when she ran for president. She had the opposite problem that she had this time around. She couldn't raise enough money. She was running on fumes and ended her campaign largely because she couldn't pay her bills. She couldn't go forward. She couldn't get people and convince them to ante up and get out their credit card or come to a big fundraiser and give her significant money. And her campaign failed and she shut it down as a result. It all turned out well for her, or well enough in the end, and that she got the consolation prize of the vice presidency and won that. But Kamala Harris was in debt in 2019 when she ended her campaign. And she had to dig really deep into arcane Federal Election Commission rulings to pull out a 2010 advisory opinion that stated and provided this weird little cutout that said, okay, if you ran for president, you have debt. Your campaign has incurred debt. But it just so happens that you become a vice president for a president who won the election. Well, that president from his campaign committee can clear your debt out. Just give you as much money as you want, wipe your debt away, and all is great and hunky-dory. Well, guess why that advisory opinion came into existence in the first place? I'll answer my own question. It's because Joe Biden in 2008, when he ran for president and then later became Barack Obama's vice president, he still had some old debt hanging around in his campaign that the Barack Obama campaign wiped away. So sometimes you have these funny little situations. But the point here is that if you don't have enough money in politics, when we're talking about all these big numbers, if you don't have enough money to run a minimal level operation, you're effed. You're done. Yeah. You're toast. You are not going to win the presidency. But as we're seeing in 2024, the opposite problem can be true. Kamala Harris had more money than Donald Trump, at least in her own campaign operation that she controlled. We're not talking about super PACs here. We're not talking about outside groups. That is on a parallel track for the moment. but she had more money than you could possibly imagine for a candidate who was in the race for 107 days and whose predecessor, Joe Biden, was bleeding cash by the end. Okay, things were not a rosy financial picture. But look, if your product is New Coke or Crystal Pepsi and people don't want to buy it, you can have the biggest marketing budget in the world, and in the end, it's not going to matter. And Kamala Harris had that problem. That was why she lost the election. She didn't have the ability, even with all that money, even with all the advertisements, even splashing stuff, on the giant dome in Las Vegas and the celebrity stuff and everything. She didn't have the message that was going to resonate with enough Americans to not only, win the popular vote, which Joe Biden had done the election before, but of course, win the electoral college, which matters the most. The message just didn't land, no matter how many times she delivered it with as much money as she had behind it.
Yeah. For all the talk about the $1 billion ground game that they had built over the election, it does appear that they had invested in an Amazon level logistics grid, but their only product was like a jar of farts. And at the end of the day, not many people are going to do it. Doesn't matter how fast you can get that jar of farts to somebody's door. It is a product problem, not a delivery problem. Let's take a bit of a step back and just look at the landscape in terms of people raising money for these campaigns. We've been on a steady trajectory upwards my entire life. I mean, I remember when we were aghast at the idea of like, the $1 billion campaign, meaning that both campaigns had combined to spend $1 billion. We're up over $3 billion between the two campaigns, probably close to $4 billion, right?
When everything is tallied up, we're going to be well into the billions. And when you intermingle the party spending, the super PAC spending, the nonprofit organization spending, and all of the different ways that today you can surge money into the system. Elon Musk, he's got more money than God. He wants to create a super PAC, fund it himself. Well, you could do that before and have been able to do so ever since the months after the Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission decision in 2010, coupled with another decision called Speech Now versus FEC, which more or less created super PACs or allowed them to be created. But you've never had somebody like an Elon Musk who did it at the level that he did it this time around. So it's a confluence of election law, election reality, and the willingness by political actors to go beyond what they've ever done before. And it's an arms race. So unless there is some sort of treaty, some sort of agreement between the two warring sides that this is not healthy for democracy, or maybe we can still be competitive with each other, but do it in a way that isn't going to be as toxic and awful as the way it is now. Barring that, sort of the like Reagan, Gorbachev going to Iceland, sitting down and saying, no more, that this shall not persist. We can expect that it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and louder and louder and louder, which translates into elections that never, ever, ever end. And in the off season, so much as there still is one right now for political elections, is going to be this small. And as soon as it starts up, you're going to have levels of political communication and histrionics that typically were reserved for like after Labor Day, before an election. And that's just going to be happening all the time, because if you've got the money, you're going to spend it. You're not going to sit on it. We're talking about debt here, but what's worse than debt for a candidate is if you end an election and you've got a surplus of like $20 million and you didn't use that money, and you lost the election by 10,000 votes, and everyone's like, are you insane? why didn't you spend that money? So
Why didn't you spend the money?
these are, why didn't you spend the money? So these are the questions that always have to be grappled with a campaign. And if you're racing to the finish line and you've got 5 days left and you're just trying to spend money every which way that you possibly can from now until the moment that the polls close in Hawaii, then you sometimes are going to spend a little bit more than you should. And I think when we see the final numbers and we can look at this stuff in black and white, and we're not relying on a few sources here and there and can analyze this stuff, we're going to see that factored in a major way to the Harris campaign, just simply overspending their allotment, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, you know as well as I do that any kind of détente that would happen to curb spending in an election isn't going to happen amongst politicians. It's going to happen at like the Sun. It's going to happen at it's going to happen at the Sun Valley Conference, where Ari from Entourage is going to sit down with the Adelson widow and say, "All right, come on, let's all handshake agreement. We're only going to spend $500 million, and that's it." Like we are not doing it. But I do wonder whether or not, in all seriousness, from the donor perspective, if you look at something like this and you say, okay, where's the line of diminishing returns? Like where is the amount of money that goes into a presidential campaign literally just spinning your wheels, and we're just paying for the more flagrant package at the Kamala HQ Fashion Week party, which has gone viral this morning, showing exactly how much money they poured into an event by and for social media staffers that were only going to vote for Kamala Harris from the very jump. I do think that we are in the level of how much was valuable. How much could you have run a campaign that was just as effective, if not more effective, with less money? I don't know if anyone's going to really internalize that lesson, because usually by the time that we get closer and closer to election day, the checks start flying and the vendors start spending. But to your point about Elon Musk, what I thought was fascinating about his PAC was that it was exploiting an inefficiency, in that he was running that PAC by himself, and you knew it, because no vendor who would ever run a get out the vote drive would ever think to give $1 million in a raffle, because that should be the vendor's money. It's not like the amount of money that Elon Musk put into that organization was odd. It was very much in line with what other people have put into similar programs. The one thing that's different is that the money ended up in various people's hands all across Pennsylvania, as opposed to into the Northern Virginia and Maryland suburbs.
Sure. Well, when we're talking about the value of a big dollar donation, I think we got to talk about two prongs here. Number one is the obvious, the value of the donation. So if somebody writes $1 million check to a super PAC, or a $10 million check to a super PAC, and is spending serious 7-8 figure cash to support a candidate, then obviously that money is going to be there to support the candidate in terms of television ads or digital ads, or get out the ground, get out the vote, ground game type stuff, like Musk's PAC was doing in part. So that is very self-evident. The other thing, though, which we don't talk about, I think, enough in all of this, is the value to the donor. What does the donor get for making that contribution? And for Elon Musk, I think, let's put it this way: if Elon Musk didn't donate a cent and had not lifted a finger to financially help Donald Trump, we would not now be talking about Elon Musk having some yet to be determined but major role in the Trump administration. Never would have happened. So Elon Musk had a buy-in. Okay, he more or less knew what that buy-in was. He went through with it. He made a calculated risk, and he's going to get a payoff by being Donald Trump's bestie here, at least for the time being, and can, in essence, kind of, may play a role, and I don't think it's overstating the case here, that is as great as any cabinet secretary, and in a way even bigger. And when you have that, that's good for his own business. Okay, so there's sort of this cycle that happens too when you make a donation like that. And on the flip side of this, if you're Reid Hoffman, or you're Bill Gates and you made some major donation to the Kamala Harris effort in one form or another, then it's of course about trying to help Kamala Harris win the election. But there's other things at play there too, and you better believe that they had some ulterior motive, even if it's not as obvious as the noses on our face at this moment as to what that was. But they wanted to make sure that they were in the conversation at the highest levels and were remembered by the candidate if the candidate ultimately it came to pass that they became president. Obviously, it didn't for Kamala Harris, but it did for Donald Trump. And he's going to remember the Tim Mellons and the Elon Musks and the various others, the Perlmutters and the Ulines and all the rest of them who were writing huge, giant checks. And, maybe we're going to have to give Miriam Adelson another medal as a result of all this. If you remember, she got one pretty big one back in the first term. So, these things just like, I will scratch your back if you scratch mine. And we're going to measure the scratching in tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. And, we'll see how that all works out in the end. It usually works out pretty good for the person cutting the check.
I will say for Elon specifically, if he was going to back a horse, he backed the horse that he thought was going to win. It turns out that it did. But the industries that he's in, electronic vehicles, space, and AI are probably all going to be radically shaped by the federal government over the next 4 years. And, if we're just looking at this in that perspective, it makes sense.
It makes absolute sense. And you sometimes have to dig a couple of levels, but it makes 1,000% worth of sense for him.
That being said, I do think he also screwed things up for a bunch of get out the vote people going forward, because that was pretty successful. And you're going to have a lot of donors that are going to say, oh, do the thing where you give away the money. And they're going to say, whoa, really? I don't know. We could probably print up a bunch of mailers. That might be good. You want to print up some more mailers?
Well, the people who were suggesting printing up the mailers, that is one thing going back to debt that is going to be an issue that they're going to have to grapple with, because there are potentially a lot of vendors who did a lot for the Harris campaign who are not going to get paid immediately or ever. And all you have to do is go back to, I don't know, the presidential campaigns of Newt Gingrich in 2012 or Rick Santorum in 2012 and 2016, or Al Sharpton, if you really want to go back in 2004. What is the commonality with all of them, Justin? It's the fact that they still have presidential campaign committees that are in debt, and they've never been able to pay off the people who they owe money to. And an important point here, which I think is sometimes lost in these types of discussions, the candidate themselves, him or herself, is not personally liable for these debts.
No.
It's the campaign committee. So Kamala Harris, Newt Gingrich, anyone else, they can just walk away and be like, all right, peace, done. And it's a campaign entity that ultimately is on the hook. So lots of different creative ways to retire that debt. But one option here, and it was the option that Gingrich and Sharpton and Santorum and a few others have used, is just never pay your debt, never pay your bill. Fiscal responsibility at the highest level, right?
Of course. All right. This might be outside your purview, but it is something that I've had my eye on. Obviously, small dollar donations have revolutionized the world of political fundraising. Not only is it a way that you can demonstrate that you've raised a lot of money, which very often it is, especially with grassroots candidates like Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, but you can also show that for a mainstream candidate, that you do have the will of the people. And we saw these gigantic numbers, these gaudy numbers of first-time donors that came in for Kamala Harris. Speculation, and I've seen it from multiple places from different ideological perspectives, are that there might be a way that large donations that might have different caps on them that can be given to certain places, that maybe you can throw that money in the wood chipper of something like an Act Blue or a Win Red, and that would come through as a bunch of different small dollar donations. Now, right now, I would categorize this as anywhere between conspiracy theory and in the reporter parlance, something that you'd want to kick the tires on and follow up on. What do you know about this? Do you think that there's any fire to this smoke that some of these online portals can be gamed?
It's hard to say. I think there's the one thing that is very legal and is practiced to at least some degree, maybe not as much as some campaigns or campaign operations or political parties would like it to, which is where somebody's just they got $1,000 or maybe they got more than that, and let's say $100,000, $1 million, and they just want it to go to people that they support. Well, through Act Blue or Win Red, these payment generation operations and others, there absolutely is a way to parcel your money out in one fell swoop to a whole bunch of different entities. There are also two joint fundraising committees, which are set up usually by a candidate, where they buddy up with a national party committee, state party committees. The Harris Victory Fund, for example, there were 50 plus different committee entities that factored into that. So if you just wrote a big check, and you couldn't write an unlimited check, but you could go well into the six figures. If you wrote that one check, made that one payment to the Harris Victory Fund, well, there was a whole formula in the fine print.
They would kick it out to a bunch of different places. Yeah,
exactly. So in a way, this is sort of like what some nonprofits do. If you have a fund, like a donor advised fund, would maybe be a kind of a parallel example you could use, where you're like, oh, well, I want to do good in the world, but I don't want to spend the time and the effort to figure out exactly how my $1 million should do the good, but I'm going to let these smart people who, are working in my best interest parcel the money out to a whole bunch of different places. That's kind of what a joint fundraising committee can be in a politics sense. And I don't know if that's exactly what you're talking about, but that is something that has become more and more a feature in politics contemporarily.
Yeah, I'm talking about the idea that there might be vendors out there for which somebody could give, $5 million, and all of a sudden 50,000 different first-time donors show up in Act Blue or Win Red, and so
I see what you mean.
The campaign gets a huge PR thing. Oh my God, look at the grassroots support that we've gotten. But because of the permissive nature of some of these payment processors, they are not great at vetting exactly who's a human and exactly what is what is in an account that has been created and used just to funnel a large donation into the spaghetti strainer of one of these online portals.
Foremost, there's no evidence that this is happening in any widespread way. Also, to the way that you described it, at least the version I'm seeing or hearing in my mind, seeing in my mind, is that would be illegal, because if you are more or less making what are called straw donations, where you are donating money on behalf of somebody who didn't actually make the donation, or you're just creating people out of thin air who are donors, but they're not real people. They're actually the person who's making the donation, then that can get you in a lot of trouble. And if there's been one area of federal election law where they've brought the hammer down on people pretty good, it's straw money donations. It can be found out, it can be tracked. Investigators can investigate that kind of stuff. And it's pretty cut and dried as to the illegality of doing that. So if anyone is thinking of doing that on some mass scale, then they may regret that decision in the future, just given history of law enforcement going after that type of stuff. I mean, we talk so much about scandal and money in politics, and the great scandal for so many people is that the things that are legal in the first place. Why should anyone be able to make a $100 million donation to a super PAC to more or less be a wholly owned subsidiary of a presidential campaign? But you're not quite there, but you're almost there. That should be illegal in the minds of many, many people, but it's not. But the straw dollar donor stuff, yes, still very illegal. Prosecutors still prosecuting, investigators still investigating.
Okay, so that is something that I've never really had a sense of. The stuff that I've seen, and it's from the more fringy elements of the internet, are that you're taking elderly people that you are saying that they are making the donations, but if you go to their house, they have no idea that they have ever made such a donation, let alone one donation every half hour for, X amount of time. So I wonder. I think it is something that we
And I'll
should
interrupt
keep.
you to say that that probably has happened somewhere, and
Yeah.
if it is happening, that is highly illegal, and
Gotcha.
you don't have to pass another law for that. That's like illegal, very, very, very much right now. And also, too, there is a big concern, and in my reporting and that of others who I've worked with, we have found evidence of people who are elderly. They're lonely. They will get a phone call. They will do anything to like just stay on the line. I mean, it's sad, and
Yeah.
they will sign up to make recurring donations, and suddenly money is just getting just siphoned out of their account, and they have no idea. And 3 years later, after Elmer or Ethel sadly shed their mortal coil, their son or daughter's going through the finances, and it's like, what the hell just happened here? $50,000 came out of their account, making all these political donations. I had no idea. So, I would caution though to anyone that is absolutely not the norm. These are situations that do happen, but it's not happening in any widespread way like every other campaign is doing something like this. That's just simply not the case relative to the amount of political money
to everything else. I mean, because there are a lot of ways that gigantic checks can get written. And I do think that it's one of those things that's always fit into the weird Venn diagram of like, ooh, that is actually interesting, because it is a good PR thing to just say that a bunch of, oh my God, look at all these first time donors or X amount of small money donors. That does get headlines. It does demonstrate a sort of social proof for a campaign, especially one that wants to demonstrate that, like, yes, we are loved. At the same time, it's also very online, and it would be a very online argument to make. So I never really know how much to take it. But in general, a lot of these online donor portals are very new still. And I do think that there will be edge cases of people trying to take advantage of it in varying different ways, up to and including what you mentioned, which is a slightly different situation of elderly people just being taken advantage of by way of loneliness. That, for me and you, when we get the, hi, it's Kamala, we're like, we roll our eyes and we say, sure, please stop, hit stop to text. Or stop to end, please, enough. But for some people, they say, oh, it's Kamala. And if you didn't grow up with text messaging, then you're like, wow, that's crazy.
You think it's Kamala Harris,
out.
Vice President of the United States. And Act Blue in particular has built, even if Kamala Harris lost and the Democrats had their hat handed to them this election cycle, they have built the best mousetrap out there. There's no question about it. The tech is as good. If you have ever bought anything on Amazon or you've had something delivered to your door by an online retailer, then it's even easier now to make arguably a political donation.
Yes.
And make that political donation not just once, but every single time there is a moment, a debate victory, the national convention, the day Joe Biden drops out and Kamala Harris is going to get in. I mean, you go and you click again and you click again and you re-up your donation and you make another $10 donation. And so that was not even happening 8 years ago. It wasn't happening 4 years ago in the way that it is right now. So conspiracy of COVID and technology and the way that we operate right now, the expectations of politics, the increase in the sophistication of all of these efforts, put that all together and you have a situation that is markedly different than it used to be in the not too distant past.
Yeah. And I also think now's the time, if we're ever going to investigate this kind of stuff and it's ever going to get just widespread traction in a way that it probably should amongst all politics, like now's the only time to do it. Like we have one off year election where unless you care about the New York City mayoral race or you care about the Virginia governorship, it's maybe aside from the first 100 days, you're going to be able to get into the campaign nuts and bolts. And I know that we will always be able to read good stuff on that from places like Raw Story and our friend, the money man, Dave Levinthal. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find more of your work?
Go to davelevinthal.com where you will find all of it in all of its forms and fashions, text, video, podcasts, you name it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics is written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. Send me an email, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Find, follow, and share video clips of the show. Justin R. Young on TikTok. Instagram is Justin R. Young. Twitter is Justin R. Young. And you can find all of our YouTube video episodes at Politics. You want to support us with a one-time donation, just paypal.me/payjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. And you can hit us up on Cash App at PX3 Cash. Of course, anything you'd like to send us in the mail, it is P.O. Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. That is Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. Of course, you can only get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com for $3 a week. You can get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. If you buy me 1 cup of coffee, you get 2 episodes. Just that simple. Of course, we have our now permanent $99 annual deal on Patreon that used to be $156. But it's been so popular on Substack, I'm willing to take the haircut. I'm willing to make sure that you guys get as many. You guys get this for the $40 less that I get per person. Doesn't matter. You guys deserve it. Head on over there right now. But if you want your name read at the end of the show, then you got to come over to our founding tier. These guys are studs. These guys are absolutely Titanic. And that is why they get their names read. Pro Idiot, Meemaw to the Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Jeremy, oh yeah, it's Adam, Chiller Tomatoes, Just Another Pilot, David, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Will, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Matt, Matthew, The Borge B, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Phil, Andrew, Devon, Edison, Paul, Jerry, Gloria, A Dog Named Checkers, Berkeley Stephen, John, and Zombie Doc. If you want your name read on the show, only one place to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com, our new home on Substack. Thank you to everybody who supported us. And there is a funny thing that is happening. It's only mildly confusing. And that is Stripe, which is now part of the payment processing chain for us, because Substack uses them. They're the ones that are handling your payment, Stripe. And my account on Stripe is Dog and Pony Show Audio. In an unfortunate character cutoff of how long a name can be that goes through the credit card charge, this is showing up for you guys as Dog and Pony Show Audi, like the car, A-U-D-I. The O is left off for savings, apparently. So I've already had one person mistakenly dispute the charge, thinking that they were accidentally charged by the Audi Corporation. But there is no such thing as a Dog and Pony Show Audi. That is me. That is Dog and Pony Show Audio. Those are the charges you are getting. If I would have known that there was a character limit, I would have changed the name. I may well do it going forward, but be not confused. On Friday's edition of the show, we will be joined by Carl Allen. He was a big favorite for a lot of you guys. We got great feedback on him in the run-up to the election. We have a really, really, really good conversation about polling, both what happened over the last few years and where we're going to go going forward. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. It is a very nutritious conversation about polling. But that's Friday. Till next time, This is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics, but this is the only show that dares discuss. Oh, 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.